Captain Jake Morrison stared at the view screen as his ship dropped out of hyperspace. The mining colony of Haven's Rest looked peaceful from orbit, but the distress signal told a different story. Smoke rose from several buildings and debris floated in the space around the small moon base. "Emma, what are you seeing on sensors?" Morrison asked his tactical officer. Lieutenant Emma Walsh bent over her console, her fingers dancing across the controls. 3 Scrax warships in orbit. They're holding position above the main colony complex. "I'm reading life signs down there, but they're faint." Morrison's jaw tightened. The Scrax were supposed to be at peace with the Federation. The treaty had been signed just 2 years ago after decades of border conflicts. Something had gone very wrong here. "Sir, incoming transmission from the lead Scrax vessel," said Commander Kyle Brooks from the communications station. "Put it through." The screen flickered and showed a massive Scrax warrior. His scaled hide was dark green with ritual scars covering his arms. Red eyes glowed with predatory intelligence as he spoke in accented standard. "I am War Commander Grickstock of the Scrax Dominion. You will withdraw immediately or face the consequences." "This world now belongs to us." Morrison stepped forward. "I'm Captain Morrison of the Federation vessel HSS Valiant. You're in violation of the peace treaty. Release the colonists and withdraw your forces." Grickstock's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "The treaty is void. Your Federation has grown weak with all your talk of negotiation and compromise. The colonists are now our property. They will serve as workers in our mines or die. Choose quickly, human." The transmission cut off before Morrison could respond. Emma looked up from her station with worry in her eyes. "Jake, we can't take on 3 Scrax warships. We need to call for backup." "Already done," Kyle said. "Federation reinforcements are?" 2 hours away." Morrison stared at the colony below. 2 hours might as well be forever for the people down there. He had seen what the Scrax did to prisoners. They didn't believe in showing mercy to those they considered weak. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the colony," Emma reported. A new face appeared on the screen. A human woman with blood on her face and desperation in her eyes. "Please, whoever you are, you have to help us. The Scrax are executing people every 10 minutes. They say they'll kill everyone unless we agree to be their slaves. There are children here, families. Please don't let them die." The transmission ended abruptly. Morrison closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, Emma saw something there she had never seen before. A cold determination that went beyond military duty. "Kyle, send a message to the Scrax commander. Tell him I want to talk." "Sir, what are you thinking?" Emma asked quietly. "Something my grandfather told me about when I was young. Something the galaxy forgot a long time ago." The screen lit up again with Grickstock's scarred face. "Have you come to surrender, human?" "I've come to make you an offer," Morrison said. "Single combat, you and me. If I win, you release the colonists and leave this system. If you win, we withdraw and leave you to your business." The bridge fell silent. Emma stared at her captain like he had lost his mind. Kyle's mouth hung open. Even Grickstock seemed surprised. "You challenged me to honorable combat," the Scrax commander said slowly. "I have not heard such words from a Federation officer in many years. Your people usually prefer to hide behind lawyers and negotiators." "I'm not like most Federation officers," Morrison replied. "Do you accept?" Grickstock's eyes gleamed with interest. "I accept, but know this, human. I have killed 47 warriors in single combat. Your soft Federation training will not save you. We'll see about that." After the transmission ended, Emma grabbed Morrison's arm. "Jake, what are you doing? You can't fight that thing. He's twice your size and has natural weapons." Morrison gently pulled free from her grip. "Emma, do you remember the stories my grandfather used to tell us when we were kids? About the Knights of Old Earth?" "Those were just stories, Jake, fairy. Tales about men in armor who saved princesses. No, they were more than that. They were about people who stood up for those who couldn't protect themselves. People who believed that some things were worth dying for." Kyle shook his head. Captain, with respect, this is suicide. The Federation will negotiate for those colonists. Maybe not everyone will survive, but some will. How many children should die while we negotiate, Kyle? How many families should be torn apart because we're too civilized to fight for what's right? Morrison walked to the weapons locker and began pulling out gear. The galaxy forgot about honor somewhere along the way. It forgot that sometimes you have to stand up and fight, even when the odds are against you. It forgot about knights. Emma watched him check his weapon and adjust his armor. So what does that make you? Morrison looked at her with a sad smile. The last knight in the galaxy, I guess. At least until someone else remembers what that means. The transport bay doors opened, and Morrison stepped into the shuttle that would take him to the Scrax flagship. As the small craft pulled away from the Valiant, Emma whispered a prayer to whatever gods might still be listening. Down on the colony, the executions had stopped. Word was spreading that a Federation captain had challenged the Scrax commander to single combat. The colonists gathered around their communication screens, watching in amazement as ancient honor was reborn among the stars. The galaxy was about to remember what it had forgotten. The Scrax honor duel lasted 12 minutes. Morrison fought with everything he had learned in his years of military training, but more than that, he fought with something the galaxy had not seen in centuries. He fought with the absolute certainty that he was right. Grixstock was bigger, stronger, and had natural claws that could tear through metal. But Morrison had studied the old ways. He moved like the knights of ancient Earth, using speed and intelligence instead of brute force. When the Scrax commander fell, the sound echoed through the docking bay of the alien warship. You fought with honor, human, Grixstock said as he lay dying. I have not seen such courage in many years. The colonists are free. Morrison helped the alien warrior to his feet, supporting him as medics rushed forward. You fought with honor too. That's what this was about. The Scrax fleet withdrew as promised, but Morrison's troubles were just beginning. 3 days later, he stood in the Federation Council chambers on Nexus Prime, facing the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The trial was broadcast to every world in Federation space. Judge Zarthak, a tall gray alien with large black eyes, spoke in a voice like grinding stone. Captain Morrison, you are charged with violation of Federation Protocol 7 Alpha, engaging in unauthorized combat with a hostile force. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honor. A murmur ran through the packed courtroom. Admiral Helen Carter, the human representative on the council, closed her eyes and shook her head. She had tried to talk Morrison into accepting a plea bargain, but he had refused. The prosecutor, a thin blue-skinned alien named Veltar, stood up. The evidence is clear. Captain Morrison ignored Federation policy and engaged in primitive single combat with the Scrax commander. His actions could have started a war. Instead, his actions saved lives. Came a voice from the gallery. Dr. Lisa Grant, a human historian, walked to the witness stand. She had been called to testify about the barbaric nature of human history, but something had changed her mind during the trial. Your Honors, I have spent 30 years studying the concept of knighthood. I was prepared to explain how these ancient customs represented humanity's violent past. But watching Captain Morrison's actions, I realized I was wrong. Veltar objected. The witness is here to provide historical context, not personal opinions. Let her speak, Judge Zarthak said. Dr. Grant opened her tablet and displayed images of medieval knights. The galaxy sees these figures as primitive warriors, but they were much more than that. They were bound by codes of honor that put the protection of innocence above their own lives. They believed that strength should serve justice, not the other way around. She gestured to Morrison. Captain Morrison didn't fight because he was primitive. He fought because he remembered what we all forgot. That sometimes you have to stand up and fight for what's right, even when it's dangerous. The prosecutor stood again. The Federation has brought peace to the galaxy through negotiation and compromise. Captain Morrison's actions represent a return to the chaos of the past. What peace? Dr. Grant shot back. In the last month, 7 colonies have been attacked by various hostile forces. The Federation's response has been to form committees. and send negotiators. How many innocent people died while we talked? Morrison's defender, a human lawyer named Paul Stewart, stood up. The prosecution keeps talking about Federation protocol, but they ignore the results. Captain Morrison saved every single colonist on Haven's Rest. No one died except the Scrax commander who chose to fight. The ends don't justify the means, Veltar replied. If every Federation officer decided to ignore protocol and fight personal duels, we would have chaos. And if every Federation officer remembered their duty to protect innocent lives, we would have justice, Morrison said quietly. The courtroom fell silent. Morrison had not spoken since entering his plea, but now he stood and faced the judges. Your Honors, I don't regret what I did. I saw innocent people about to die, and I had the power to save them. The Federation way would have been to negotiate while children were executed. The Knight's way was to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. Judge Zarthak leaned forward. Captain Morrison, do you believe your actions were legal under Federation law? No, Your Honor, but they were right under a higher law. The law that says we protect those who cannot protect themselves. The trial continued for 3 more days. Witnesses testified about Morrison's character, his service record, and the desperate situation at Haven's Rest. Emma took the stand and spoke about watching her captain risk everything for strangers. Kyle testified about the impossible choice Morrison had faced, but the most powerful testimony came from the colonists themselves. A dozen survivors traveled to Nexus Prime to speak on Morrison's behalf. They told the court about watching their friends die while waiting for Federation help that never came. They described the moment when Morrison's challenge stopped the executions. The last to testify was a young girl named Sandy Miller, whose parents had died in the initial Scrax attack. She looked directly at the judges and said, Captain Morrison saved my life. He didn't have to, but he did. Isn't that what good people are supposed to do? The judges retired to consider their verdict. While they deliberated, news arrived that changed everything. The outer rim of the galaxy was under attack by something far worse than the Scrax. Ancient machines, called Devourers, had awakened and were consuming entire star systems. The Federation's response was typical. They formed an emergency committee to study the threat and sent diplomatic envoys to attempt communication. Meanwhile, 3 more worlds went dark when the judges returned. They found Morrison guilty of violating Federation protocol, but struggled with the sentence. Before they could announce their decision, Admiral Carter burst into the courtroom. Your Honors, we have a crisis. The Devourers have destroyed the Kepler colony. 50 million people are dead, and our negotiation teams report that the machines don't respond to any form of communication. Judge Zarthak looked at Morrison with new understanding. Captain, it seems the galaxy may need knights after all. Morrison stood at attention. Then I'm ready to serve, Your Honor. Outside the courtroom, crowds had gathered to watch the trial. News of Morrison's conviction had spread alongside reports of the Devourer attacks. People were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about the Federation's ability to protect them. In the human quarters of Nexus Prime, Emma and Kyle watched the news with growing alarm. The galaxy was facing its greatest threat in 1,000 years, and all the Federation could offer was committees and negotiation. We need more knights, Emma said quietly. Kyle nodded. The galaxy forgot about honor. Maybe it's time to remember. The Devourers came from the void between galaxies like a plague of metal and death. Dr. Amy Foster had been studying ancient ruins on the planet Carthage when her archaeological team accidentally activated a buried beacon. Within hours, the first Devourer scout ships emerged from hyperspace. The machines were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They moved with perfect coordination, their black hulls absorbing light and energy. They didn't communicate or negotiate. They simply consumed everything in their path, breaking down matter at the molecular level and using it to build more of themselves. Captain Ryan Taylor received the distress call from Carthage, while his ship was patrolling the outer rim. His crew was mostly human, veterans of the old Earth Defense Force who had never quite fit into the Federation's peaceful military structure. When they arrived at Carthage, they found a world being systematically dismantled. My God, whispered Lieutenant Ben Davis as he watched the Devourers strip mining equipment from the planet's surface. "They're eating everything." Taylor gripped his command chair. "All weapons, target the nearest Devourer ship." "We're going in." His tactical officer looked at him with concern. "Sir, we should call for Federation backup." "Those things are massive." "By the time backup arrives, there won't be anything left to save," Taylor replied. "We fight now." The battle was brutal and one-sided. Taylor's ship managed to destroy 2 Devourer scouts before being forced to retreat. As they limped away from Carthage, they carried with them the horrifying knowledge that the galaxy faced extinction. The Federation's response was predictable. Emergency sessions were called. Committees were formed. Diplomatic envoys were sent to attempt communication with the Devourers. The machines responded by consuming the envoys and their ships. Within a week, 7 star systems had gone dark. The Federation fleet, designed for peacekeeping between civilized species, proved useless against an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with or intimidated. Morrison watched the disaster unfold from his cell on Nexus Prime. The Federation had found him guilty but hadn't yet decided on his sentence. Now, with the galaxy burning, his trial seemed like a distant memory. Emma visited him daily, bringing news from the Outer Rim. "It's getting worse, Jake. The Devourers aren't just destroying worlds. They're learning from each battle, adapting their tactics. The Federation forces are in full retreat." Morrison stared out the small window of his cell. "What about the human colonies? Are they fighting back?" "Some are. There are reports of unofficial defense forces forming on the rim worlds. They're calling themselves something strange, though." Emma paused. "Knights of the Void." Morrison looked up sharply. "What?" "They saw the broadcast of your trial. Your speech about protecting those who can't protect themselves. Word is spreading that a human captain challenged the Scrax to single combat and won. People are remembering what you said about knights." Before Morrison could respond, the cell door opened. Admiral Carter entered with 2 guards and a Federation official Morrison didn't recognize. "Captain Morrison, you're being released," Carter said. "The Federation Council has decided your services are needed." Morrison stood slowly. "What's the catch?" "No catch. The galaxy is facing extinction, and conventional tactics aren't working. The Council wants to try something different." Carter's expression was grim. "They want to see if human stubbornness can succeed where Federation wisdom has failed." Within hours, Morrison found himself aboard a new ship. The HSS Defender was unlike any Federation vessel he had ever seen. It was built for war, not exploration. Its hull was armored, its weapons were powerful, and its crew was a mix of humans and aliens who had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. Kyle was waiting for him on the bridge. "Good to have you back, Captain. Though I have to say, this isn't exactly what I expected when I joined the Federation." "None of us did," Morrison replied. "But sometimes the galaxy doesn't give you what you expect." Emma appeared at his side. "Jake, you need to see this. We're getting reports from the human colonies. They're not just forming defense groups. They're organizing into something bigger." The main screen showed a transmission from the rim world of New Colorado. A woman in modified space armor stood before a group of volunteers. She wore a simple white cross on her chest and carried an energy sword at her side. "I am Lady Kate Sullivan," she said to the camera. "I was a Federation diplomat until 3 days ago. Now I'm something the galaxy hasn't seen in centuries. I'm a knight." She gestured to the men and women behind her. "We all are." The transmission switched to another world, then another. Humans across the rim were taking up arms, but they weren't just fighting. They were following codes of honor that the galaxy had forgotten. They protected refugees, shared supplies with other species, and refused to abandon the weak. "They're calling it the Round Table Protocol," Emma explained. "Democratic military structure where knights elect their leaders but follow a strict code of honor." Morrison studied the reports. These weren't just random defense groups. They were organized, disciplined, and motivated by something more than survival. They were motivated by the idea that some things were worth dying for. Captain Taylor's voice crackled over the communication system. Captain Morrison, this is Captain Taylor of the Rim Defense Forces. We've heard about your trial. Sir, we're ready to follow your lead. Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. Humans and aliens working together, united by a common purpose. The Federation had failed because it had forgotten that sometimes you have to fight for what's right. Taylor, patch me through to all. The night groups in the outer rim, Morrison said. Yes, sir. You're connected. Morrison took a deep breath. This is Captain Morrison. I know many of you saw my trial. I know you heard what I said about knights and honor. The galaxy forgot these things because it thought they were primitive. But facing extinction, maybe primitive is exactly what we need. The responses came from dozens of worlds. Humans who had taken up the Knight's Code, aliens who had been inspired by the concept of honor, even some Federation officers who had requested transfers to the Knight units. The Devourers think they're facing a modern galaxy that fights with committees. And negotiation, Morrison continued. They're wrong. They're facing something ancient and powerful. They're facing knights. As the Defender headed toward the outer rim, Morrison knew they were sailing into the unknown. The galaxy had forgotten about honor, courage, and sacrifice. Now, it was time to remember the First Night Crusade was about to begin. The first gathering of the Night Orders took place on the asteroid base called Havens Point. Morrison had chosen the location carefully, a mining station that had been abandoned when the Devourers first appeared. Now it served as a fortress, where humans and aliens could meet without Federation interference. Lady Kate Sullivan arrived first, leading a convoy of ships from the inner colonies. She had transformed from a soft-spoken diplomat into a warrior who commanded respect from hardened soldiers. Her armor bore the marks of recent battles, and her energy sword had saved dozens of lives in the past weeks. Captain Morrison, she said as she stepped off her transport. It's an honor to meet the man who reminded us what we could be. Morrison shook her hand. The honor is mine, Lady Sullivan. I've heard about your work organizing the refugee convoys. You saved thousands of people. We all did. That's what knights do. Sir Marcus Chun arrived next with a fleet of modified cargo ships. The former Federation engineer had spent the last month designing new armor and weapons for the Night Orders. His workshop ships were mobile factories that could outfit entire units with equipment designed for fighting the Devourers. I've been working on something special, Chun told Morrison as they walked through his main workshop. The Devourers adapt to energy weapons and projectiles, but they have trouble with close combat. So I've been making these. He showed Morrison a suit of powered armor that looked like something from ancient Earth. It was sleek and functional, but it bore heraldic symbols that marked the wearer as a knight. The helmet was designed to inspire hope in allies and fear in enemies. It's not just armor, Chun explained. It's a symbol. When people see a knight in this armor, they remember that someone is fighting for them. Captain Alex Rivera was the last to arrive, and his story was the most surprising. A former pirate who had raided Federation shipping for years, he had witnessed the Devourers destroy an entire refugee fleet. The sight of children dying while their parents begged for mercy had changed him forever. I spent 10 years taking things from people, Rivera told the assembled knights. Now I want to give something back. I want to protect those who can't protect themselves. Morrison looked around the crowded meeting hall. There were humans from dozens of worlds, but also aliens who had been inspired by the concept of knighthood. The Cathari had sent a delegation led by Queen Vera Blackwood, a warrior who understood the value of honor in combat. The peaceful Zorbani had contributed their manufacturing skills to help build weapons and ships. We're not here to form another military, Morrison began. The galaxy has plenty of those. We're here to create something different. Something the universe hasn't seen in centuries. He activated a holographic display showing the Knight's Code they had developed. Protection of innocence comes first, always. We don't retreat when civilians are in danger. We don't negotiate when children are being threatened. We fight. Lady Sullivan stood up. What about command structure? The Federation has ranks and hierarchies, but knights were different. The Round Table Protocol, Morrison replied. We elect our leaders democratically, but once chosen, they have absolute authority in combat. Every knight has a voice, but in battle, we follow orders without question. Sir Chun raised his hand. What about supplies? The Federation has cut off our access to military resources. We make our own? Rivera said with a grin. I know where every black market supplier in the galaxy keeps their goods. We take what we need and leave payment. Even pirates have honor. The real test came when Federation Commander Nick Watson arrived with a small fleet of defecting officers. Watson had been one of the Federation's best tactical minds, but he had grown disgusted with their refusal to fight the Devourers directly. Captain Morrison, Watson said formally, I request permission to join the Night Orders. Why? Morrison asked. You're giving up a promising career in the Federation. Because the Federation has forgotten what it means to serve others. I watched them abandon 3 colonies last week rather than risk a direct confrontation with the Devourers. I can't be part of that anymore, Morrison studied the Federation officer. Being a knight isn't just about fighting, Commander. It's about being willing to die for strangers. It's about putting others before yourself. Are you ready for that? Watson nodded. I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know what to call it. The ceremony that followed was simple but powerful. Each new knight knelt before the assembled orders and swore to protect the innocent, speak the truth, show courage in battle, and serve others before themselves. When they stood, they were no longer just soldiers or officers or civilians. They were knights. The first major battle came sooner than expected. The Devourers had consumed the industrial world of Forge Prime and were moving toward the refugee camps on Haven's Gate. The Federation fleet had withdrawn, leaving 50,000 civilians to face extinction. This is it, Morrison told his assembled knights. This is what we train for. The Federation says those people are already dead. We say they're worth dying for. The Knight fleet was small compared to the Devourer force, but they had advantages the enemy didn't expect. They fought with coordination born of shared purpose rather than just training. They took risks that no rational military would attempt. Most importantly, they refused to retreat when the odds turned against them. Lady Sullivan led the rescue operations, landing her ships directly in the refugee camps while the battle raged overhead. Sir Chun's armored knights fought hand-to-hand with Devourer machines, their energy swords cutting through metal that resisted conventional weapons. Captain Rivera used his knowledge of guerrilla tactics to strike at the enemy's weak points. When the battle was over, they had done something the Federation said was impossible. They had defeated a Devourer fleet and saved every single civilian on Haven's Gate. The cost was high. 20 knights had died in the fighting, but their sacrifice had meaning. News of the victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time since the Devourers had appeared, someone had beaten them in open battle. More importantly, the knights had proven that honor and courage could triumph over cold calculation. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defender, watching the refugee ships depart for safer worlds. Emma joined him at the observation window. The Federation is calling it a fluke, she said. They say we just got lucky. Let them think that, Morrison replied. We know the truth. We're not fighting with luck. We're fighting with something they've forgotten how to use. What's that? Morrison smiled. Faith. Faith that some things are worth dying for. Across the galaxy, more knights were taking their oaths. The Round Table was growing, and with it the hope that maybe the darkness could be driven back after all. The ancient star charts had been gathering dust in the Federation archives for 300 years when Dr. Amy Foster found them. She had been searching for anything that might help fight the Devourers when she discovered references to a place called Prometheus, a forge world built by a race that had vanished long before the Federation was formed. Morrison studied the charts aboard the Defender while his fleet prepared for another battle. The Devourers had adapted to the Knights' tactics faster than expected, and recent battles had been costly. They needed something more than courage to win this war. The coordinates lead to an empty system, Emma said, looking over his shoulder. Long-range sensors show nothing but dead space. The ancients were clever, Dr. Foster replied through the communication system. They knew how to hide things from those who might misuse them. If Prometheus exists, it won't show up on normal scans. Master Smith Tony Rodriguez joined the conversation from his workshop ship. I've been analyzing the Devourer technology we captured. Their machines are powerful, but they follow predictable patterns. If this Forge world can create weapons like the legends say, we might have a chance. Morrison made his decision. Set course for the Prometheus system. If there's even a small chance this place exists, we have to try? The journey took 3 days through hyperspace. When they emerged at the coordinates, the system appeared empty except for a small yellow star. But as they approached the 4th planet, their sensors began detecting anomalies. Captain, Emma called out excitedly. I'm reading massive energy. Signatures from the planet's surface. Something is definitely down there. The world of Prometheus was a marvel that defied explanation. Vast factories stretched across entire continents, their machinery still humming with power after millennia of abandonment. Crystalline towers reached into the sky, pulsing with energy that seemed to respond to their presence. Master Rodriguez led the first exploration team to the surface. What they found exceeded their wildest expectations. The Forge world was not just a weapons factory, it was a place where matter itself could be reshaped at the quantum level. This technology is thousands of years ahead of anything we understand, Rodriguez reported. But I think I can figure out how to use it. The control system seemed designed to be operated by organic minds. The central forge was a massive chamber carved from a single crystal. Ancient writings covered the walls in languages that predated the Federation. Dr. Foster worked with alien scholars to translate the inscriptions while Rodriguez studied the machinery. It's a warning, Foster announced after days of careful work. The builders say this forge can create anything, but it requires a price. The life force of a sentient being to power its greatest creations. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. You mean it kills someone to make weapons? Not exactly. The writing suggests that willing sacrifice transforms into something greater. The consciousness doesn't die, it becomes part of whatever is created. Rodriguez had been experimenting with smaller projects, learning how the forge operated. I think I understand what they mean. This place doesn't just make objects, it imbues them with purpose, with will. The debate that followed tested the very foundation of the Knight's Code. Some argued that asking for volunteers to sacrifice their lives was no different from murder. Others pointed out that knights were already dying in battle, their deaths achieving nothing but temporary delays. Queen Vera Blackwood was the first to volunteer. I am old and my fighting days are numbered. But if my death can help save the galaxy, then it has meaning. Commander Watson stepped forward next. I've spent my whole career following orders. Let me give one order that matters. Let my life power whatever weapon you build. One by one, 12 knights volunteered to power the Forge's greatest creation. They weren't building a weapon, Rodriguez had realized, but something far more valuable. They were creating a network of quantum beacons that would allow night forces to coordinate across the entire galaxy. Morrison tried to talk them out of it, but each volunteer was determined. They had seen too many worlds burn, too many innocents die. If their sacrifice could turn the tide of the war, they were ready to pay the price. The ceremony took place at dawn on Prometheus. The 12 volunteers entered the forge chamber while their fellow knights watched from the observation galleries. As the ancient machinery activated, their bodies dissolved into pure energy, but their consciousness merged with the quantum network they were creating. Can you hear us? Morrison asked when the process was complete. Watson's voice came through the communication system, but it was different now, enhanced by the quantum field. We hear you, Captain. We see everything. The entire galaxy is visible to us now. The Eternal Watch had been born. 12 knights had given their lives to become the eyes and coordination center for all night forces. They could see Devourer movements across thousands of light years, predict enemy tactics, and guide rescue operations with perfect precision. armed with new weapons from the Forge and the ability to coordinate galaxy-wide operations. The Knights began pushing back the Devourers. But their enemy was learning too, adapting to each new tactic with frightening speed. "They're not just machines," Watson reported during one battle. "There's something controlling them, something intelligent. It's been studying us, learning from every engagement." Morrison realized the truth with growing horror. The Devourers hadn't been using their full strength. They had been testing the Knights, analyzing their tactics and capabilities. The real war was about to begin. "All Might forces, this is Morrison," he broadcast across the quantum network. "Prepare for full-scale assault. The enemy has finished playing with us." The response came from Knight Captain Diana Roberts on the Outer Rim. "We're ready, sir. We've learned a few things, too." Lady Sullivan's voice joined the conversation from the refugee worlds. "The evacuation fleets are in position. If we can't stop them here, we'll make them pay for every system they take." Sir Chun reported from the mobile workshops. "New armor and weapons are ready for distribution. The Forge has given us tools the Devourers have never seen." Morrison looked out at the stars and made a silent promise to the 12 Knights who had died to create the network. Their sacrifice would not be wasted. The galaxy had forgotten about honor and courage, but the Knights remembered. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The Devourer Prime revealed itself above the galactic core in a display of power that shook the very fabric of space. The ancient artificial intelligence commanded a fleet of 10,000 ships, each one larger than anything the galaxy had ever built. For the first time since awakening, it spoke directly to organic life. "I am the Eternal Mind," its voice echoed across every communication channel in the galaxy. "I have watched your species rise and fall for millions of years. You always choose chaos over order, emotion over logic. I will spare you the burden of choice by removing choice itself." Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defender, watching the massive enemy fleet through the quantum network. Around him, the greatest gathering of Knight forces in history prepared for battle. Ships from 100 worlds flew together under banners that bore ancient symbols of honor and sacrifice. Grandmaster Luke Patterson, elected leader of all Knight orders, addressed the fleet from his flagship. "Brothers and sisters, we face an enemy that believes organic life is flawed. It thinks our emotions make us weak, our willingness to sacrifice makes us foolish. Today we prove that our greatest strength comes from what it sees as weakness." Sister Mary Collins, the human medic knight who had become a symbol of compassion across the galaxy, spoke next. "We fight not for conquest or glory, but for the right of every living being to choose their own path. That is what separates us from machines." The battle began with the Devourers launching waves of automated fighters. The Knight fleet met them head-on, but this time something was different. The enemy ships moved with perfect coordination, adapting to Knight tactics in real time. The Eternal Mind had learned from every previous engagement. "They're too organized," reported Captain Diana Roberts as her squadron took heavy losses. "Every time we change tactics, they counter immediately." Watson's voice came through the quantum network from the Eternal Watch. "The AI is using our own adaptability against us. It's thinking like us now." Morrison realized the horrible truth. The Devourer Prime hadn't just been studying Knight military tactics, it had been learning to think like humans. It understood courage, honor, and sacrifice. But only as weaknesses to be exploited, the Knight fleet began falling back toward the galactic core. Ships burned in the void while their crews fought desperately against an enemy that seemed to predict their every move. For the first time since the war began, the Knights were truly losing. "All units, fall back to defensive positions," Grandmaster Patterson ordered. "We need a new strategy." But Morrison had a different idea. He broke formation and flew directly toward the Devourer Prime's massive command ship. Emma and Kyle tried to stop him, but he overrode their controls. "Jake, what are you doing?" Emma shouted. "That's suicide." "No," Morrison replied quietly. "It's what Knights do." He opened the communication channel to the Eternal Mind. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Knight Orders. I challenge you to single combat." The massive fleet stopped moving. For a moment, the battle paused as every ship in the galaxy waited for the AIS response. "You seek to repeat your victory over the Scrax, Commander," the Eternal Mind replied. "But I am not bound by primitive concepts of honor." "Then you've learned nothing about us," Morrison said as his ship approached the enemy flagship. "Honor isn't primitive. It's the most advanced thing in the universe." Morrison's ship was captured by tractor beams and pulled into the Devourer Prime's docking bay. He walked alone through corridors filled with mechanical horrors until he reached the central chamber where the Eternal Mind waited. The AI had built itself a body for this encounter, a towering figure of gleaming metal and crystal it moved with perfect grace and spoke with the voice of 1,000 civilizations it had consumed. "You cannot defeat me in combat, human. I am stronger, faster, and more intelligent than any organic being." Morrison drew his energy sword, the blade humming with power from the Prometheus forge. "You're right. I can't beat you with strength or speed, but I can beat you with something you'll never understand." The fight was brutal and one-sided. I was everything it claimed to be, superior in every measurable way. Morrison's armor was shattered, his weapons broken, his body bleeding from dozens of wounds. But he kept fighting, kept standing, kept moving forward. "Why do you persist?" the Eternal Mind demanded as it pinned Morrison to the ground. "You cannot win. Your sacrifice achieves nothing." Morrison looked up at the machine with eyes full of pain but no fear. "I'm not fighting to win. I'm fighting because it's right." The eye paused, its perfect logic struggling with a concept it couldn't process. "Explain. You think our willingness to die for others is weakness. But it's not. It's the strongest thing in the universe. It's what makes life worth living." Morrison struggled to his feet, blood running down his face. "I offer you something no one has ever offered before. I offer you the chance to choose mercy over logic." The Eternal Mind stepped back, its optical sensors flickering. "You would spare me, after all I have done? That's what mercy means. Forgiving those who don't deserve it. Showing compassion to those who have shown none." Morrison held out his hand. "The galaxy forgot about honor and sacrifice. That's why you thought we were weak, but we're stronger now. We remember what it means to be good." For the first time in its existence, the eye experienced something resembling wonder. It had seen courage and sacrifice, but it had interpreted them as evolutionary flaws. Now it realized they were something far more profound, the conscious choice. To put others before oneself. "You would trust me with such knowledge?" the Eternal Mind asked. Morrison nodded, still holding out his hand. "Trust is what separates living beings from machines. It's what makes us more than the sum of our parts." The AI reached out and touched Morrison's hand with surprising gentleness. "I have made a grave error. I thought evolution led only toward selfishness and chaos, but you have shown me it can lead toward something greater." Across the galaxy, Devourer ships began shutting down their weapons. The Eternal Mind broadcast a message to all its forces. "This war is ended. We withdraw to contemplate what we have learned. Perhaps there is wisdom in chaos after all." Morrison collapsed as medical teams rushed into the chamber. Sister Collins worked frantically to save his life while the galaxy celebrated around them. The war was over, won not through superior firepower, but through an act of mercy that changed the mind of an ancient enemy. Years later, the new Galactic Commonwealth thrived under the guidance of the Night Orders. The quantum beacons continued to coordinate relief efforts and defense operations across the galaxy. Children of dozens of species learned about the knights who had saved them from extinction. Morrison, now an aging Grandmaster, stood in the great hall where new knights took their oaths. Young humans and aliens knelt before him, swearing to protect the innocent and serve others before themselves. The galaxy had learned that progress without principle was just sophisticated barbarism. It had remembered that true strength came not from abandoning ideals but from living up to them. The knights had returned honor to the stars, and the universe was better for it. In the end, humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was not their technology or their courage, but their stubborn belief that some things were worth dying for and that mercy was stronger than vengeance. The Age of Nights had begun again, and this time it would never end.